حملات المقاطعة وسحب الاستثمارات وفرض العقوبات على إسرائيل، ما موقفها من حل الدولتين والصراع العربي الإسرائيلي ومقاطعة شخصيات بعينها؟ مع جلعاد آتزمون من جديد ومن الداخل. معكم زينب الصفار، تابعونا.
What are you doing?
Just shopping.
You can't buy those.
Why not?
Because those products support Israeli apartheid.
Oh no!
حركة مقاطعة البضائع الإسرائيلية وسحب الاستثمارات وفرض العقوبات على إسرائيل والشركات الداعمة لها أبصرت النور في 9 من تموز يوليو عام 2005 بدعم من 171 منظمة فلسطينية لا حكومية، وشهدت في السنين الماضية نجاحات متصاعدة في المملكة المتحدة، حيث قرر اتحاد الجامعات والمعاهد دعم وتنظيم حملة مقاطعة لإسرائيل. ودعا الاتحاد الوطني للصحفيين بالإضافة إلى أعضاء في الاتحاد العمالي والنقل إلى مقاطعة كافة البضائع والمنتوجات الإسرائيلية، وحتى تنشيط حركة المقاطعة الاقتصادية والثقافية والأكاديمية والرياضية. الاتحادات الطالبية الاسكتلندية والإيرلندية قاطعت أيضا، وأحدت حذوها بعض القطاعات في أمريكا، ونظم أول مؤتمر للمقاطعة في أستراليا عام 2010. وفي مقاطعة أونتاريو قام أكبر اتحاد كندي ويمثل أكثر من 200 ألف عامل بدعم الحملة الدولية لمقاطعة إسرائيل رداً على المعاملة الإسرائيلية للفلسطينيين. هذه الحملات دفعت الكنيسة الإسرائيلي في 11 من تموز يوليو 2011 إلى إقرار قانون يجرم كل من يدعو علناً إلى مقاطعة إسرائيل، بيد أن هذه الحملة ببعض جوانبها ومنظريها لاقت انتقادات واسعة من شخصيات عالمية لطالما أعلنت دعمها للقضية الفلسطينية ومناهضتها للممارسات الإسرائيلية، مثل نعوم تشومسكي ونورمان فينكلشتاين وجلعاد آتزمون. حقيقة الموقف من هذه الحركة يطلعنا عليه الكاتب السياسي المثير للجدل وعازف الساكسفون العالمي جلعاد آتزمون، الذي يتحدث أيضا عن العلاقة الوطيدة بين الجهاد وموسيقى الجاز. Controversial political writer and international jazz artist, Mr. Gilad Atzmon, welcome back again to The Inside. Well, actually, this is part 2 of what we started back then, talking about certain issues about the concealment in history as it's related to various peoples and whatever. And now we need to listen more to your approach regarding the BDS, the boycott, divestment and sanctions, and also to how the Israel lobby controls and hijacks the UK politics, and also to talk about jazz and jihad, you know, because when you talk about jazz and you talk about jihad, people just say how are they related? You say in one of your articles, jazz and jihad, the discourse of solidarity, quote, nowadays I realize that jazz is no different from jihad. Accordingly, playing jazz is my personal jihad. How are these two related?
I think that regarding jazz and jihad, it is very simple, and it is not just myself. If we interpret jihad as a form of self-reflection and self-improvement, this is what jazz is all about. Jazz is
it only jazz related to jihad?
I don't know. I can let. I can definitely tell you that jazz could be regarded, and I'm saying it in a very positive way, as a suicidal mission. You are giving everything you have. Jazz, as you probably know, is not the best way to make a living. you transcend yourself beyond the material. You just search for this purity of the music to a certain extent, and I wrote a lot about it in the past. Jazz, that is regarded the classical music of America, is the most anti-American thing, because it is about self-perfection and submission to beauty instead of commercialism, instead of money-making, instead of the material. And for me, jazz, which is a very painful engagement, because you are never good enough.
But you are regarded as, excuse me, one of the finest jazz artists.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy to hear it, and I'm very happy.
According to the Guardian.
No. Yeah, for sure. I see these kind of compliments every too often, but it doesn't. It's make me feel great, but when I'm on my own, it doesn't make me feel greater. It just actually, what it means is that I have to be more committed, to practice more, and as we get older, it becomes more and more complicated, because we are busy, we are touring, and so on. I believe that this issue of self-perfection that is so crucial within the notion of jihad is fundamental to jazz. Now, jazz, like every other art form or every other thing, in the Western universe, has been commercialized, and the success of a jazz artist now is not by the purity or the beauty that it produces, but actually by how many units or how many cells it produces, he or she produces. And I think that this is an embarrassing fact, but for me still, jazz is the attempt to reinvent yourself every day. And this is very fundamental and essential for my writing. We spoke earlier on about concealment. One of the reasons that I am controversial is because I see my role as the duty to touch the repressed, the concealed, to tell my Jewish friends or my Jewish foes, listen, it's very nice that you talk about Zionism, what did you do to the desert and all that stuff, but can we look at that and that and that? Can we look at the fact that that your lobbies are trying to push the world into another world war in Iran as we speak? And people, and especially Zionists and Jewish anti-Zionist people who are committed to Jewish tribal politics, are very unhappy about it, and their unhappiness, by the way, cheered me up, because it means that I'm doing the right thing.
Let me just ask you here something concerning the lobby's influence on the UK politics and pushing forward into a kind of confrontation with Iran. Why this myopia on part of the anti-war movement when it comes to Middle Eastern issues? Is this also a manifestation of the lobby's influence, deep influence in the UK politics? And is it another aspect of the lobby reach?
I think that you have to understand that what we recognize as the Israeli lobby, which I tend to call the Jewish lobby, within...
Do you consider the Israel lobby and the Jewish lobby the same?
In most cases. In most cases. And if they're not the same, we really have to make sure that we differentiate. But what is usually referred as the Israeli lobby, in most cases it's a Jewish lobby. It's an American, British, French lobbies of Jews who believe that they know what is good for Israel and the Jews.
Right.
So it's a tribal lobby.
Yes.
Obviously there are some Israeli lobbies that promote the interest of Israeli companies.
Right.
And this is a different issue.
Let us go back now to the question of the entire
If I understood your question correctly, you are talking about some lobby activity within the left, within the anti-war movement, for instance. And you are totally right. There is no categorical difference between the Jewish lobbies that operates near to the American administration or within the American administration or the British administration, and the Jewish lobby that operates within the left. Both lobbies are dedicated to Jewish tribal interests. I had an interview with a very interesting guy, with Philip Wise, who is the guy who runs Mondo Wise, and it's a very important pro-Palestinian website. And Philip Wise was brave enough to admit to me that he is not operating out of philanthropic care, what we may call universal ethical intent. He is committed to Jewish self-interests. So his pro-Palestinian activity is Jewish self-interest. Now, I argue that this is the case for very many years, but so far, Philip Wise was the only person who was brave enough to admit it. And as we could see, when they had the feeling that a very important lady, in my opinion, Greta Berlin, who is the co-founder of the Free Gaza, the flotilla mission, the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza, came to America. Philip Wise was leading the campaign against her because he blamed her for being an anti-Semitic without even trying to substantiate it.
Against Greta Berlin.
Against Greta Berlin. So fundamentally, the Jewish lobby within the anti-war movement, within the left, is very similar to the Jewish lobby that operates within administrations.
In the UK, in which domains does the lobby has its most effective power? In the media, in the political life,
it's definitely
in the economy.
I think that these are the three main aspects: media, politics, and economy. In my book, I quote Chaim Saban, who is a multi-billionaire.
Of the Saban Center.
Yeah. And he says, if you want to dominate American politics, but he says, but this is about America, if you want to intervene within American politics, and this is something that he said in Israel, in Mossad Center, I think. He said, we have to dominate the think tanks, which is the ideological thinking of the American people, the media, and the administration. And this is where they invest most of their energy, and they are very successful. We have to remember that when Tony Blair took Britain into a criminal war in Iraq, a war that left around 1.5 million dead Iraqis, it was the Labour Friends of Israel, led by Lord Levi, who were the chief fundraisers of his government. Are these facts related? I let you to decide. I cannot say.
Right. Gilad, we're going to stop now for a short break, and then we'll talk after the break about why is Gilad Atzmon attacked by the BDS movement. Okay, a short break, and we'll be back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Inside with controversial political writer and international jazz artist Gilad Atzmon. Gilad, why this boycott from the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement? And you're not the first. Finkelstein was also on the list of boycott. Is it really a boycott? What's the problem with Gilad Atzmon?
To start with, I'm not so sure that there is. I can't remember if there was any kind of a BDS attack on me or criticism of my work. I'm definitely aware of myself being critical of some aspects of BDS.
So you were criticizing them?
Yeah, but from the very beginning, I criticized some aspects. And to be precise, I repeat myself, I'm not so sure that interfering with freedom of speech is the best way to go, to approach. I'm not so sure that it serves the Palestinian interest or our vision of future one state of vision of Palestine as a pluralist place. As we progress, we already we have seen a BDS attacking Daniel Barenboim, who probably did more for Palestinians music and culture. It's quite shocking.
Actually, Daniel Barenboim and Günter Grass, they also attacked Günter Grass, I think.
Really?
German novelist,
sure.
poet, sculptor and receiver of Nobel Prize in 1999. They are considered as persona non grata in Israel.
For sure, for sure. But apparently I think that, according to the BDS, Barenboim was even BDS, not the PA. Barenboim was a persona non grata in Ramallah. They criticize Finkelstein, Chomsky, as far as I'm aware, and I'm not so sure that these kind of campaigns do serve the notion of pluralism, freedom of speech, and so on. And this is really my criticism of BDS. However, when I started to look into BDS recently, and this was after one of the leaders of BDS, Omar Barghouti, signed with few other Palestinians who actually admitted not to read anything by me. Mm-hmm. When Omar Barghouti, together with Ali Abunimah, we can talk about Ali Abunimah later, signed on this document to a call to disavow me, I immediately received emails from Palestine. Gilad, you better look into this activity of Omar Barghouti, who is the leader of the cultural and academic boycott. He's a person who called us to boycott Israeli universities and Israeli academics. He himself enrolled to an Israeli university a few years ago.
Are you sure of this?
I'm absolutely sure about it. And he was also already questioned about it publicly.
Why would you do this? Is it part of your smear campaign against Omar Barghouti?
No, I'm telling the truth here. Mm-hmm. And people are allowed and more than entitled to search on the net. I wasn't aware of Omar Barghouti.
Which university?
Tel Aviv University.
Tel Aviv University.
Now,
but you are against the academic boycott of Israel.
Yes, but I think that if you call if you ask me to boycott Tel Aviv University, you should at least make sure that you don't go, that you go register to this university.
Yes.
Why? Mm-hmm. Why? Because if the argument is that Israel is an apartheid state, I'm sorry to say it, if Israel is an apartheid state, a Palestinian cannot go to study in a Jewish university.
Mm-hmm. But they say that those same academics are the people who are developing the software for the missiles and for the bombs that are used to attack the people and kill them.
I totally understand what are the arguments for
the academic boycott.
And I'm not saying as well that we should dismiss the idea of academic boycott. We should make sure that our best philosophers and by the way, I'm one of those, our most clever people, and we have enough legal experts in our discourse, like, you know, Professor Richard Falk is one of them, should look into it, and we should present a dynamic criterions that would allow us to deal with sensitive issues such as freedom of speech. So for instance, if people are academically related to the Israeli military industry, we have to deal with them. We have to deal with them directly. One of the arguments that the BDS produces, and it's a valid argument, is that Israeli artists are actually funded by the Israeli state. So when we have a ballet company or theater company, they are actually funded as Israeli state, and they are asbara. This is fine. I understand the argument. The argument is valid. It should looked into. However, if this is the case, how come they also campaign against Barenboim, against Norman Finkelstein? Norman Finkelstein is certainly not funded by the Israeli state. He's a persona non grata in Israel.
He was kicked off out of
Exactly.
DePaul University
due
to his stances.
And I'm also not funded by the Israeli state. I think that once the biggest problem, and it's a practical problem, once we build a Stalinistic infrastructure, I think that the big problem here is that once we build a Stalinistic infrastructure that is there to suppress freedom of speech, it is very difficult to control it. It's like a cancerous disease.
Allow me here to go back to the activities of the BDS movement, because according to some that if the BDS movement keeps going, there will be no Israel. What's your take on this? Is it actually going that deep and that far and achieving all its goals?
To tell you the truth, as I said, I support BDS. I don't think that BDS is going to bring Israel down, because as I mentioned, the trade between Britain and Israel, for instance, twice, doubled last year. So I don't think that they are going to destroy Israel, but I think that we don't have to think in these terms. There is no contradiction between BDS resistance, as we saw yesterday, intellectual confrontation, which is something that I'm engaged in. I think that all those fronts together with Israel falling apart because it doesn't itself realize its raison d'être, all those things together will bring to the collapse of the Jewish state.
Here, what is the stance of the BDS movement when it comes to a two-state solution and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yeah, this is another complicated issue. Unlike the case of the South Africa boycott, where there was a clear vision of the day after, when it comes to the BDS, they don't present a vision of future Palestine, and not a coherent and consistent picture. And here I'm going again to mention something that is very problematic about BDS and very embarrassing, and I'm very embarrassed to talk about it. When BDS was founded, it came with a goal statement.
Back in 2005.
In 2005. Its second goal statement stated that it opposed any colonization of all Arab land. In the last year, they amended the goal statement, and they changed this goal number 2 and added 1967. So now they are against all colonization of all Arab land post 1967. Yes. As far
what made them amend this article?
Listen, I'm not.
As far as you know,
I cannot tell you that I know, but I definitely, I can tell you that I tried to investigate. I asked a lot of people, including Palestinians in Palestine, who were very embarrassed to find about it, because as far as I was aware, the Palestinian cause is centered around 1948 right of return. It is not clear now what where BDS is aiming and what it is aiming for. But what I found out is that BDS is funded by a lot of Palestinian NGOs, and those NGOs are funded not necessarily by the right people that would push for justice, for just peace in the region. Most Palestinian NGOs, as I said, are funded by the Open Society that is run largely by George Soros, who is a liberal Zionist. By the way, I don't blame George Soros. George Soros sends money to Palestine. Bless him. I have criticism of Palestinians who may compromise the most precious Palestinian principles just because somebody pays their annual fees.
Mr. Gilad Atzmon, you're a controversial writer, actually.
Am I?
Yes, we do consider you so.
I learned to live with it.
Yes, and international jazz artist. Again, many thanks indeed for trying to focus more on certain terms related to the BDS, related to the Israel lobby, and to this concealment in history, which is something, it's a new template, according to you. Again, thanks for joining us on this special interview from the inside on الميادين. إذن لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة، ودائما من الداخل theinside@almayadeen.net وبريدنا theinside@almayadeen.net. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.